Disclaimer, Joss, Jules, and Nevermore are not professional therapists. They will be sharing their personal experiences and advice, but this is in no way a substitute for professional help. There is also a good chance of swearing, tears, and triggering conversations, so listener discretion is advised. Disclaimer, Joss, Jules, and Nevermore are not professional therapists. They will be sharing their personal experiences and advice, but this is in no way a substitute for professional help. There's also a good chance of swearing, tears, and triggering conversations, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slaying Demons, a podcast about facing your fears in life and being the best version of yourself. I am your host, Jocelyn, and joining me, as always, are my two lovely ladies, Jules and Nevermore. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you guys doing tonight? I'm really excited because we're going to get to talk about all of our super spooky stories, and some of the things our listeners sent in are crazy. So I'm really, really excited about tonight. But Jules, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been looking forward to this episode for a while because we've been kind of leading up to it. And it's I'm doing good. I'm super stressed about BlizzCon and everything going on related to that. Things are getting better, but it has been super duper stressful. So
yeah,
cannot wait till it's over.
I can't even, I mean, like, I feel like I'm getting super stressed out about going to BlizzCon, and all I have to do is go and show up. Like, if I had a party on top of that, I think, like, we don't even have to plan the meetup this year because our meetup is actually part of Con Before the Storm. So we were part of the Kickstarter that they did. So we were one of the stretch goals and they hit it. So we don't even have to worry about that. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Because the less you have to do trying to get there, the better. And this, for some reason, this party has that for this year, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the CTR party that we run at BlizzCon for the Convert to Raid community, and we Kickstarter it every year, and we do all of these, so my planning starts in April every year. And then it's all the Kickstarter fulfillment plus all of the logistics around getting the party to go. And so I'm dealing with hundreds of people, all needing stuff and tons of moving parts. And so it had this year just felt like, and even the people who were helping us like this past weekend pack up all this stuff, they're like, this feels like we've got more stuff to deal with. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm so excited. I'm leaving for BlizzCon. Actually, I'm going to California on the 29th. So it's less than 2 weeks for me. I'm taking a couple of days off beforehand to just rest and relax and have some fun. It looks like I'm going to medieval times now.
Yay! I'm so excited. All three of us are going, right?
Mm-hmm. Are you really?
I've never been. Yeah, so I'm very excited.
I'll be going on Monday when I get there, the day after I get there, and then I'm going to Disney on Halloween, and I'm so excited.
I don't know how you're even doing that. That's going to be insane.
I know. Well, I've been to Disney World during the Halloween. I've been there on Halloween, which was really fun. It's really, really fun. And so I'm dressing up as Hermione from Harry Potter.
Oh, fun.
I've got the wand, and so it's just like I am gonna have
not a Disney property though. Tisk tisk.
You could still dress. I went to Disney World as a I think I went with a medieval costume last time. We saw everything. Anyway, I'm just really excited. There's things coming, and it's yeah. So Nevermore, how are you doing? She's very blonde, you guys. She looks so pretty.
I'm very bleach blonde. I'm in the middle of my hair transition right now. It will be blue, but I didn't have time before the show. So I'm good. I'm on vacation from work for this week. So I'm like chill.
You are so chill.
We've had like so much fun doing stuff and going out to eat and just relaxing, and it's been great. So it's just, it's staycation, kind of working on stuff around here. So it's been good. And
Joss? Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I'm all right. Still struggling with a lot of the same kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I was talking to you guys in chat, and because of all of my crazy friggin' internet issues, and it's nothing to do with anything in our house, which is what makes it the most frustrating, because if it was something in my house, I could just replace it and, like fix it. But it's like something from our ISP. There's like something between them and our house that's messed up, and it like went down 2 weeks ago when we were supposed to do our show about, we were actually going to cover some professional jealousy conversations. So I don't want to get into too much of what's, kind of going on with me and bugging me, because I'm sure we'll do it on a future show eventually. But yeah, I just I'm kind of struggling a little bit right now. So like I'm okay. It's just I feel like it's probably due to just the lead up to BlizzCon. It's like it kind of throws a lot of those issues into the limelight. So you can really like ignore a lot of the stuff like day to day and week to week, but then some parts of the year it just brings it into very sharp focus. So I'm trying to be like happy and excited about going to BlizzCon and seeing my friends and stuff and not worrying about a whole bunch of the other things. But yeah, professional life is tough right now. Put it that way.
Well, we're going to hit that topic. I know we will, because I think we should. Yeah. I think it's something that's really a good conversation to have. And, hey, if we want to do it next week, we can do whatever the hell we want because it's our show.
Very true.
We don't have to stick to the every other week thing if it'll help. That's what I say.
Yep.
I'm on board for that.
Good. So I don't want to spend too much time, dwelling on too many of these things, because we got so many super freaking cool stories from our listeners sent in today. I know Nevermore and I have been talking when we actually brought up the concept of doing this show to give Jules kind of a place to talk about some of the supernatural type paranormal / out of the ordinary. And I'm saying all these things because I literally do not know what Jules' stories are. There's nothing in the notes. She wouldn't tell us anything ahead of time. All I know is
you didn't want me to. You didn't want me to.
I know. I'm just
excited.
Saying. We are very excited. But because I have no idea what your stories are, I don't really know how to classify them. But I know Nevermore and I are in the same boat where we both are very super into the whole idea of supernatural, paranormal, everything else, but we've never had anything super cool happen to us. So Nevermore and I are going to take on the role of reading your stories, and then Jules is going to tell us some of hers. So we kind of wanted to do this episode because sometimes it's a little bit hard to, and I was actually talking to my mom before the show as well. Just because she has some kind of similar-ish experiences. Some I'm going to share near the end of the show of stuff that's happened to her. But like, even when I told her we were going to do this show, she's like, no one ever talks about this stuff. That's so cool. Like, she's like, everyone, because she's like, even as she was telling me some stories over the phone, I could hear my dad in the background going, you're nuts. And that is kind of like, it's the general reaction. A lot of people are super skeptical, especially in our like social circles. We deal with a lot of very, very smart, very, very nerdy people who tend towards the scientific. So when you start talking about some of the non-scientific things, they get a little bit eye-rolly. So there will be no eyes rolled tonight, Jules. This is your platform.
So you want me to start up? You want me to kick it off?
It's up
or
to
did
you.
Want to read a story?
I can warm us up with a listener story if you want.
Sure, go ahead. I mean, I'm not nervous about this at this point. I've prepared myself to do it because, but the problem is that it does make people uncomfortable. And so I just don't talk about it unless someone wants to hear about it, like if there's an opening. And so I've never said any of these stories in public in a podcast or anything like that. So,
I'm so excited. That was my little excited squeak. All right. Well, I'll start it off with one story that comes to us from Stellar Leader. And he says, "Hello, awesome ladies. You asked us to share our supernatural / spooky stories. So here I go. I'm totally cool with you sharing my name on this time, by the way." He says, "First, this happened back when I was in college. A group of friends and I had met to study at one of my friend's houses. We all spent the night there. Sleeping arrangements determined by my friend Manuel and I shared a room and a bed. He's straight, so no funny business there. We had barely fallen asleep when I suddenly felt a weight at the end of the bed, like someone had just sat down. I also felt immediately paralyzed with fear." I can relate to that part, that's for sure. I couldn't move and I could barely speak to Manuel. He did hear me, though, because he had also been awakened by the same freaking sensation. We stayed there for a little while in the dark, barely moving and speaking in whispers. At one moment, I gathered the courage to extend my arm out of the bed and turn on the nightlight on my side. I swear, the very moment there was light in the room, the weight lifted on the bed and disappeared, and we both felt immediately relieved. Needless to say, we kept the lights on for the rest of the night." So that's story number one. Story number two is back in college again. I was walking with two other friends leaving the campus, and suddenly all three of us stopped and looked back because we'd all felt like someone was right behind us. Of course, there was nobody there. We kept walking and we felt the same thing again, but this time only two of us stopped and looked while our other friend ran forward. When we asked why, she said she had clearly felt a hand on her shoulder. Those are my stories. Hope you enjoy them. Light and good wishes for all of you. Thank you so much for sending your story in. Creepy, man. I have literally, okay, so the first part of this story, like not necessarily the weight on the bed, and this is why I don't necessarily kind of like tell these stories, because I just assume it's all in my head. You had someone else there to witness it, so that's a little bit different. But the number of times that I've woken up and felt like there was somebody standing at the end of my bed. A couple of times when I was living alone in Halifax, I literally saw someone, like just kind of like a shadowy figure, but it's always like you're just waking up. So you're like, how much of this is my brain playing tricks? Like, how much of it this is... Do
you believe it, though? Do you believe that that type of stuff exists?
Well, and I guess maybe that's a good kind of thing to cover, is that, you know, I guess I'm one of those people who's... not a yes, but not a no is the best way I can kind of say. I guess I'm skeptical and I'm like Mulder. I want to believe.
Yes.
But I'm very like Scully in my way. Like if the things that had happened to Scully and Mulder had happened to me, like I would definitely be what's the most logical scientific explanation? If there isn't one, well, I guess then there are aliens and ghosts and werewolves and whatever, you know,
right.
But without, proof, I guess, I find it hard to believe, but I really want to. Like,
right.
So I guess that's the best way that I can, the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
Sure. And Nevermore, do you believe? What do you believe when it comes to the supernatural?
Well, okay. My background of like the fearing death and all that kind of stuff, like I would love to believe that there's like people around us all the time, good, looking out for us and all that. I totally think it could happen. And I just think our science stuff isn't there yet. Like, I don't think they've figured it out. Like, I think it's like future Ghostbustery kind of like machine type things to like get there, you know? But I like when you see shows like that are like explaining that in a place that has something terrible happening in it, it would make sense that people's spirits feel stuck in a place like that, you know, they aren't gone from it. So I believe that kind of stuff. Like I have not experienced, I want to have experienced this kind of stuff, but at the same time, it scares the shit out of me. Like, I want to go ghost hunting so bad, but like, if I was in a hotel room and that happened, I'd be like, see ya, like, I'm out. Goodbye.
And that's the thing about me too, is that I have a very, like, I scare so easily. Like, I mean, okay, so yesterday there was something in our wall that sounded like it was like a chewing sound, and like, so I think we live in the country. We probably have, it was probably like a mouse or something. Anyways, I heard this like chewing sound in the wall, and then I went and got Matt, and I'm like, okay, you can hear this, right? I'm not insane. And he's like, oh yeah, I hear it. He banged on the wall and it stopped. So he scared away whatever it was. It could have been a raccoon on the roof too. Like, it could have been a lot of things.
I want to come visit.
But then literally I had turned my back on him for a half a second, and he like bashed on the wall really, really loud again, and I wasn't expecting it. I almost fell over. I jumped. So, like, I scare ridiculously easily. So for me, the idea of like even walking through a cemetery when it's like not even kind of dark yet, which I used to have to do on my like my way home from school and stuff, just freaks the fuck out of me. Like, I don't know how people actually, I would love to go ghost hunting, but same thing as you, Nevermore. I'd never have the balls to actually do it.
Yeah. Well, and I would really, like, if I ever go, like, I would go with people who aren't going to fuck around and, like, mess with me, you know, like, who, even if they're not interested, they're not going to, like, set me up to, like, scare me on purpose or whatever. Thank God he doesn't do that. Ben does not scare me on purpose because I would be so mad.
Matt never scares me on purpose either. It just kind of happens. He just does it. He just does it because I'm just a fraidy cat.
The sound system that we have, he has to go whoop when he goes. So anyway, like, I mean, I'm sure he would maybe go with me. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, he's shaking his head. He's like, so apparently he won't go with me. So I'd have to go with somebody else. But I would make sure that whoever I pick would not screw with me on purpose. Because I would actually want to try to, like, have an open mind about it without, like, making it a joke. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think for me, too, it's the kind of thing, and I think this is probably true for a lot of people, like, I really do want to believe it because it's nicer to think that not only there's something after, you know, for myself, but more along the lines of like that my loved ones are still around, because like whenever you lose anybody in your life, it kind of like, it feels kind of crappy to be like, well, this person was here and now they are not, and it would be really cool if they still were, right? So, you know, I feel like there's that kind of element to it too, where like, I want to think that there's ghosts, because if there's ghosts, then there's a chance that my loved ones are still around. But then there's also the flip side of that. It's like, if there's ghosts, then, you know, Jack the Ripper's still around, and that's also freaky. So there's two sides to that hopeful coin.
Right.
Anyways, Jules, do you want to hit us with your first story?
Sure. So my first story goes back to my childhood. You know, and I will say I've always been what's known as a highly sensitive person, and it's not like I'm I am super emotional, but it's not like I cry at everything. It's highly sensitive person means that you pick up on a lot of stuff around you all the time.
You've talked about that a lot before on the show, because we had a whole episode where you talked about basically like being an empath and picking up on all the feelings around you and how exhausting that can be. Exhausting
it is. And so with that kind of also comes apparently some supernatural stuff. And so when I was younger, in my parents' house, my childhood home was where my father and his brother grew up. So it was his childhood home as well. And it's cool. It's a one-story ranch style, like with an L shape. And my room was on the very end of the hallway where all the bedrooms were. And occasionally I would go to my bedroom and my light would not turn on. And there would be this very ominous, very scary, uncomfortable feeling like you should not be here now.
Okay.
And so I would go and I would like leave the room and I would go sit in the living room, and then later on I'd go back to my room and my light would turn on and there would be no reason why. Like my dad didn't like reset the breaker or something like that. And I never told now I've had all of these discussions with my dad. He understands, like he's probably listening right now. I think he is listening right now. So he knows everything that I'm saying. And I asked my dad, I said, you know, because my grandparents died, the grandparents, my father's parents died before I was born. And I asked my dad several years ago, I said, where did grandma and grandpa, like, did they die in our house? And my grandmother had passed away in our house.
Ugh.
And so, she was like a wonderful woman. Everybody loved her. So my belief is that she was probably still there, and I was a freaked out little kid. And so that feeling of, you should not be here, like I'm trying to talk to you, was misinterpreted. But that has happened to me, in that it happened to me so many times in that house. And it was not like a super old house. It wasn't. It was,
Was that her room?
I asked my dad.
Jules' dad, was that her room?
I can tell Nevermore's like freaking out right now.
I don't know if it was or not. So early on as a child, I knew I could, like, that thing where you saw something around a corner and then you turned and you realize. I had that all the time. It happened all the time, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so, I believe now as an adult, I probably just like pushed it away, but I probably was seeing ghosts at some point. That's what I believe. Because that feeling, and as I tell you more stories, I think you're going to believe that too.
Okay.
That's where it starts. That's where it starts from.
So, cause I guess we didn't really, we touched on what Nevermore and I believe, and I just kind of assumed I knew what you believe, but tell us. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I truly 100% absolutely believe that we are surrounded by the spirits of those who love us, who have gone and moved and moved to the spirit realm. I also believe in being able to, there are some people that can speak to the other side, can speak to spirits. I also believe in spirit guides, as I will tell you more about.
Oh man.
Explain some of this stuff. But I am a logic-based person in a lot of ways. I want to know that there's a proof of that. And I had a long conversation about this with my dad one time when I went to go visit. And my dad told me stories of things that he had seen, because he was a police officer when I was growing up and used to work the midnight shift.
Oh,
and stuff.
Such a brave man.
And my dad and I have a telepathic connection. It is absolutely a telepathic connection. I will not deny it, because every single time that I am at his house, it happens. And, I'll think about him and my phone will ring, and he does the same thing with me. I was in the other room when I was out there in September, and I was thinking about something, and then all of a sudden he blurts it out, and it was not anything that was in context around us at all. And I went, Dad, you did that thing again. And he goes, oh, really? So that's like that thing.
You hear a lot of people talk about that in terms of twins. Like you hear that all the time with like twins across the country that, something bad happens to one of them and the other one knows it. And, like all that kind of like just connection to people that you're super, super close to. Because I've done that a lot too with my mom. But like I've never thought too much of it. And maybe it's just Jules are so much more sensitive than I am. But, I
think it's also acknowledging, and saying, oh, that's just a coincidence. You know what? I don't think there are coincidences on things. I just don't. And so, so if you want to tell another listener story, and then I can tell you my second one.
Absolutely. Nevermore, do you want to take away this one? This one's from Kiera Rose Plays, who's been very active in our Discord. So hi.
Okay, I will probably stumble reading this. I'm not good at it like Jocelyn and Jules, so bear with me.
Oh, stop it.
It's Kira? Is that who say it?
Yes.
Okay, so Kira Rose Plays says, so I have a number of supernatural stories. Some are just knowing things I've never been told before, like a negative event had happened in a space we visited before anybody told me the history, or having lost something for a long time and then dreaming of the location when I wake up to find it the next day.
I wish I had that power, by the way, because right? I lose things all the time. That is the best power to have of life ever.
Me too. She said, however, the real doozies happened while actively ghost hunting at an old building near my hometown, which I think is awesome and good for you for doing that. I would love to do it. Someday maybe I'll have the guts to Jocelyn and I maybe we'll do a video series.
Oh my God. That would be so hilarious.
It'll be like,
oh my God, it'd be so funny.
The close-up camera thing. What is that movie called?
Oh, the Blair Witch.
It'll be me and Jocelyn in the woods.
We should try to fit it in. We should find like some spooky, scary thing in Anaheim when we're there for BlizzCon, and just
I am not going with you.
Aww.
Okay.
Jules, you wrecked it.
All right.
All right. So Kira says, one particular evening wait. I can't read. One particular evening there, we had several things happen. We set up in a hallway that was notorious for what people called shadow people. Jocelyn knows all about that.
Yeah.
We first took a look around in the rooms we were going to sit just outside, and then sat down in the hallway to observe. At the end of one hallway was a set of double doors with stairs just to the other side, so periodically other people in the building would walk by with their flashlights, and they would illuminate the outline of the double doors and the two windows that were in the doors. Then upon one occasion of a flashing light on the doorway, we saw... and she notes that if everybody sees the same thing when they're hunting, they tend to have a call out word to get the attention of everybody else without describing what's happening, so that they don't like contaminate, I guess, what they're saying.
Bias
so
their other hunters.
Like two-headed bubble on the door. They just, I guess, alert each other. So they said we saw a large figure blocking the light that we should have been able to see. We called hello once or twice before the illumination passed the doorway, and then we turned a light in the end of the hallway, and there was nothing and no one there.
Wow.
Fast forward half an hour, we were mostly just chatting and getting ready to wrap up in the hallway when the person on the end of our seated group says, hey guys, and a much more alarmed guys. So we turned around to see what we all described as child-sized figure running down the hallway, to the point where we all reacted by recoiling. The figure darted through the doorway to the room on the right before where we were sitting, and needless to say, we were all a little freaked out.
I have literal goosebumps right now.
I know. After collecting ourselves, we tentatively went into that room, which we had already looked in, and it was empty before we began, and found in the center of the room a child's shoe.
Wow.
That's like next level.
I mean, that stuff makes me a little skeptical because it is a ghost hunting place.
Oh yeah, so
that's when I get a little skeptical because, you know, I don't know. It's just that's when I'm a little skeptical.
Some of it's tourism, and some people are just kind of hyping it to hype it. But
yeah, and like how much of it is, you know, like images and projections and people screwing with you and hoaxes, and when it's a known place. Yeah, I know what you mean, Jules.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I would be any less freaked out, because even when I go to like Canada's Wonderland or Disney World on Halloween and go through those mazes and stuff, when I was a kid, and granted way too young to be in a maze like that, it was my friend's birthday, and she was like, it was her like 12th birthday. And she was the kid that just like got everything all of the time, no matter what it was. Her parents were just like, yes, 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 yes. So she said she wanted to go to this like Halloween haunt thing. And so 12-year-old Jocelyn was so freaked out by the time she got to the end of the maze that there were like people like pushing on the walls, like panels on the walls and the floor. And I literally, both feet jumped on one of the panels because I was just like, no, stop. And all I heard was a big thump underneath and someone go, ow. I was like, sorry. I was really scared. Yeah, I totally, exactly.
I'll have to tell you my haunted house story later. We don't have time tonight, but I'll tell you later.
That's awesome.
I totally forgot why I was telling that story or where that was going at all, but
there you go.
But yeah, hoaxy haunted house things. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I was saying I would still be totally freaked out, even if it was a hoax. And even if I found out it was a hoax before or after, wouldn't matter. A little ghost child running at me would still scare the shit out of me because we've covered this. I'm such a scaredy cat all the time.
Exactly. So, okay. So second story. When I moved from New Jersey, actually I went from New Jersey to Pennsylvania. I went to school in Pennsylvania, and then I moved to Illinois after I was done with graduation. I lived in Chicago area for a couple of years, and then I moved to Madison, Wisconsin. So I kind of moved around a lot. And when I was in the Midwest, things were happening that were really strange. Like I would run into people and, you know, going to a store or, people, strangers for sure. And they'd look at me and they would say, have we met before? And there was no reason why, because I didn't grow up there. And they're racking their brains. Like, did we work together? Did we go to school together? And I'm like, no, I am not from here. It was happening to me all the time. It didn't matter how I wore my hair. It didn't matter if I had makeup on, if I didn't, if I was heavy, if I was slim. It was happening to me all the time. And I was going to a county fair, which was in Madison, and I was listening to my favorite radio station, had this psychic that they had on there all the time, and they were like, this psychic is going to be at this fair, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to wait in this line and I'm going to talk to this psychic, because I think and in the line I am saying to myself, I'm going to ask this guy about why people always say, have we met before? Right. They think that they know who I am. I am not kidding you. This is actually what happened. I sat down in front of this guy. He looked at me and he says, have we met?
No way.
I am not shitting you. And I looked at him and I said, no, but I'd like to know why you asked me that.
So what did he say?
He just sat there and he blinked at me for a second and he goes, you have medium-like tendencies. You channel people who other people love that are surrounding them.
Aww.
And that is why these people are asking you this, because they see someone familiar in you.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts?
That's why Jules has such a calming presence and everyone loves her, because she literally is everyone you've ever loved.
And I was like, and this still happens to me all the time. I swear. I mean, you guys have never seen it happen because we're around people that kind of know who I am already, or have been at least familiar to what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But this happens. It doesn't happen quite as much as it used to, but it still does. Like if I'm talking, because I tend to keep my head down now. I don't like to. I tend to kind of keep myself from. But talk about freaking. You think I'm making this up? I'm totally not making it up. This guy literally said exactly what was in my head that I was going to ask him, and that was his explanation. And I said, well, you know what? That makes sense. If I bring something to someone else, having that ability, it makes sense to the work that I do too.
Very true.
It makes sense to the that I can have that connection with people. And it happens to me all the time in terms of that connection. I met a girl when I was in Anaheim and we were doing that podcast convention, and I clicked with this girl right away, and she, we were just chatting, and I just, I have sometimes a sense of when I can, talk to somebody and just give them a message, if you know what I mean, mm-hmm. And she mentioned something and I said, I feel like you need to be, we were just talking about work stuff, and she was kind of sharing all of these things about how she'd gone through this major accident and how she had kind of come to realization that what she was doing in her life wasn't really what she wanted to be doing, and how all of, she kind of helps all of her friends. And I said, did you ever think about, like, are you thinking about like being a life coach or something like that? And she goes, oh my, how did you know that? People have been telling me like over and over that I should be a life coach. And I was like, okay. So yeah, I mean, just story number 2.
Is Jules like coming and going and being a little bit robot-y to you too, Nevermore, or is that just my internet being crappy?
There was a couple spots that it froze up a tiny bit for me.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it wasn't for very long. It was just for a couple words. So.
No, yeah, okay. And you're back now, so it's okay. I was curious. I wanted to know if my internet was about to go down, but it looks like we're okay, guys. Knock on wood.
Cool.
All right, so I have a story that I'm going to share. This one, I forget. Oh man, I forgot to write down who sent it in, but I'm pretty sure it was Everick, something like that. Everick, yes. The one that the fan lives in Mexico, because this is a very Mexican centric story. So I'm pretty sure that's who wrote it in. He says, I have a story that probably could have made me a believer if it had gone on a little longer. A while back, I went to a nearby town of Taxco with my girlfriend's family for her cousin's quinceanera. Is that how you say that? I hope so. I hope I didn't butcher it. Okay.
I'm so proud of you.
They all stay. I know a lot of French things. I can pronounce the crap out of French, but Spanish eludes me. I apologize. They all stayed at her grandparents' place, but I stayed in a hotel. My girlfriend couldn't stay with me, of course, because Catholicism. I stayed in Hotel Victoria, which is famous because it's supposedly haunted. My girlfriend has friends and family who have seen and heard unexplained things there, and so on. When we checked in, we noticed crude makeshift crosses on the door. We asked the owner, and he told us La Lorena had been visiting each night in the past week, terrorizing the guests. For those not up on Mexican folklore, Lorona, that's what I'm going to go with, was a mother who fell in love with a man who hated children, so she drowned her kids so he'd be with her. Then he totally cheated on her. So now she stalks the waterways of Mexico, driven by a hatred of men. And I feel like there are quite a few different versions of this particular myth, but it's like the most well-known Mexican folklore outside of like the chupacabra stuff, right? So very, very widespread in Mexico, this myth. So he goes on to say the hotel was actually really pretty. Part of the charm was how it was quiet and removed from the town, but as night fell, the tranquility changed into isolation and loneliness. There was also no internet or cell service. When I came back to my room after the quinceanera around midnight, a dramatic, violent thunderstorm began to rage. I'm talking lightning so close the thunder literally shook the walls, and it rained so hard it sounded like rocks falling on the roof. Now, the Hotel's Lorona stories, I think I've said that 3 different times now, or said that 3 different ways now. Don't overly worry me. Everyone and their mother has a story here. Still, I couldn't help but feel I'd walked into a cheesy, low-budget horror movie. Isolated hotel with a history, crotchety old man sticking crosses on doors and warning me of impending evil, sudden loss of cell service, violent storm, and then just as I was getting ready for bed, and this is where it gets really creepy, guys, I noticed 2 things.
Garrus came out from behind, or is it Spike? One of the cats came out of the doorway behind Jules, and I almost had a heart attack.
I only understood half of that last sentence. Nevermore.
My cat is passed out in the hallway behind me.
He wasn't there a second ago, and like as you were talking about leading up to like the biggest part, like all of a sudden there was just this thing behind Jules.
You okay?
I'm okay. Keep going.
Oh my god. Nevermore, I swear, if you ever actually saw a ghost, it would probably just kill you.
You talked about shadow people and stuff, and I just wasn't expecting something behind Jules in her hallway to move. Sorry.
Okay. So, just as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed 2 things. One, the room had 2 beds. Next to where I was sleeping, a little square hole had been cut in the blanket, making a little window to the area under the bed. So theoretically, something under the bed could be looking at me while I slept without me being able to see it. Had that been there when I arrived, I hadn't seen it. 2, just before I turned out the lights, a cockroach the size of my hand crawled out of the wall. Anyway, I fell asleep and briefly dreamed that I woke up to see someone lying on the other bed staring back at me, but that was my own fault. I made up a story where that happened to freak out my girlfriend when I first arrived, so there's no wonder I was dreaming of it. I would say the cockroach in the hotel room could also be explained by if the thunder was loud enough to be shaking the walls. Could have woken something up and it could have crawled out of the wall. Just saying. But yeah, the whole hole in the bed thing. Ew. And shivers and everything. But it continues on to say, when I woke up, it was a sunny, beautiful day. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened, and I never met La Lorena. And so we got into the car to head back to Mexico City. That's when it started. My window was cracked the tiniest bit as we drove. Somehow a scarab fell out of a tree on the side of the road, fell through the teeny tiny crack as we sped past, and landed on me. I didn't think too much of it. Also, You're cracking your windshield's big enough that like stuff can
bug
get
fell
through
in
it. Yeah, you should probably get your windshield fixed. But so he says, I didn't think too much of it, but when I got home, I discovered my bed was full of ants. The next day, I went to meet my girlfriend at Starbucks by her work. On the way, a spider fell out of a tree and landed on my neck. When I was at Starbucks working on my laptop, a bright green jumping spider crawled out of the table and came at me. My girlfriend says she doesn't even think the species even lives here. It went on like that for a week. Suddenly, bugs seemed drawn to me. I began to think my night at Hotel Victoria left me marked with some ancient bug curse of doom. But after that week, it stopped. So maybe that's how curses work. They just last a week and then wear off. Maybe I need to go stay in that room again to see if I can replicate my findings. But now I'm beginning to think it was my mind constructing a false narrative, aided by the fact that I live in a tropical country full of bugs.
There are no coincidences, people. There are no coincidences.
That's
crazy
a
bug
lot
curses?
of bugs in a tiny time span for you to notice that.
Yeah, that's how I. Yeah, no, that freaks me out, dude. Like that really freaks me out.
The hole in the bed, though. Oh my god, the hole in the bed. Even if it was there ahead of time, who put the hole in the bed? Like, who's watching from underneath the bed? I can't.
That's creepy.
Mm-mm.
And I don't know if it's better that you noticed it and didn't leave the room, or worse. Like, I'm pretty sure if I'd noticed that, I would have just been like, I'm out.
Now we're going to have trouble in our weird hotel room for BlizzCon.
Oh, I am checking that thing like floor to ceiling. There are going to be no bed holes for people to peek on me while I'm sleeping. No.
No bed holes.
I'm going to check behind all the mirrors and the pictures and stuff too, because the kind of hotels we choose to stay in at BlizzCon are definitely the kind of hotels that would have holes in the wall for people to peep.
Yeah. And I can't even say it's only Rose choices because we had the dungeon room the 2 years in a row.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So Jules, do you have another story for us before Nevermore takes another one?
Yep. Here's my last one for you. So remember how I told you earlier that I believe that we are helped and led by spirit guides.
Yeah.
And this is why I believe this. I was 39. I'm 43 right now. So when I was 39, it was a few months before my 40th birthday. I was working at my job. I was working, the job that I didn't like. And, my normal routine is that I would just, every day I got in my car and I listened to podcasts as I was going back and forth from work. That was what I did every day. And I got into my car to go home for the day. And I had this overwhelming, feeling. And all I heard in my head was, put music on now. Don't put your podcast on, put music on now. And I was like, okay. So I put some music on. It was just background stuff. And that entire drive home, all I can explain is that I heard someone talking to me. And they told me this. They said, yes, they said to me, don't be afraid. They said, don't be afraid, but I need to tell you something. I am so impressed that you actually drove home. You kind of go on autopilot. I was like, how you drive the same thing every day. You don't even realize how you got there. That's what was happening. I was doing my drive home and it said, don't be afraid. And it said, shortly after your 40th birthday, your life is going to change. Your whole life is going to change. And it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be pretty. And I'm telling you this now so that you can be prepared for it, but you don't know what's coming. This is what it just said. Your whole life is going to change after your 40th birthday. But don't be afraid, because we're going to be here with you. And I was freaked the fuck out. I was like, what? what is going on? I am like, I don't understand. I don't like, what? Well, what the fuck happened? My entire life changed after my 40th birthday. Entire life. I changed where I live. I was no longer married. I moved to a different, I moved to a different state. I moved, changed jobs. My entire life changed after my 40th birthday. And this voice, this guide is there. Every once in a while when I need it, it comes and it talks to me.
Really? And I'm trying not to have like my crazy skeptical pants on. I'm trying to have my open-minded pants on. But like
it sounds fucking crazy, which is why I don't talk about this in public. Like, oh, Jules, you hear voices. Well, you know what? Apparently I needed it.
Well, and so I'm not gonna say you're crazy. I'm gonna say had it happened to me, I would have thought I was crazy. I probably would have just been like, okay, Matt, we need to take me to a doctor like now because I'm literally hearing voices. But
yeah, I'm trying to keep my open-minded.
You know, I mean, and that, so there it is. I mean, this stuff happens to me, and a lot of times what happens to me, it actually happens to me on airplanes, which is a very odd thing when I fly, because my mind, my brain, I'm so busy, I'm so occupied, and going on an airplane is typically when everything tends to slow down, you know?
Right, you lose all your connection. You don't have your phone. You don't have your Twitter. You're
ignore everyone around you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're trying to ignore everything around you. And then you just kind of have time to think. And this has happened to me a couple of times where I've, again, very strongly compelled or feeling like pick up your phone, open your notebook and app and start typing. I have notes and it's not the way I speak. It's not the way I talk, but it's literally a message that I write out. It's weird. I know it sounds weird, guys. And this is why, this is not polite conversation topics. Like, people go, oh, you're fucking crazy. Well,
Jules, you're fucking crazy, and I love you anyway.
But I might be fucking psychic and save your life. So.
Well, and okay, so I'm going to tell the story because, like I said, I talked to my mom before the show tonight because she had told me something a long time ago, and I wanted to make sure that I got all of the facts straight before I told it on the show. So I was talking to her, and we basically had the same sort of conversation where, and like I said, my dad was in the background yelling at her, telling her she was nuts, and all this kind of stuff, and she said something very similar, that it's not the kind of thing that you bring up in conversation. And, my mom is the most skeptical, down to earth. She took computer science in the 70s at college when that was not a thing that you did ever as a woman. And she is a super duper practical, scientific, blunt woman. I love her, but holy hell, she doesn't pull any punches.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily the kind of person that you think that would be easily swayed by stuff like this. But even she, when I was talking to her, she was telling me that, she has dreams often that are, and she called them not necessarily psychic, but prophetic. She dreams about stuff before it happens. And she said to me, she's like, it is the most frustrating thing in the world because she never knows what's a dream and, what might potentially happen. She said so one of the ones that she dreamed that ended up happening years and years and years later was she actually dreamed about me. I was still a little kid. So this wasn't even when I was in college or leaning towards podcasting or anything. When I was a little kid, she had a dream of me grown up sitting at a table signing things. And I was not any kind of person. I didn't lean towards, I hated being the center of attention. I was super, super shy. I was not in any kind of what do you call it? Not necessarily passion, but I had no hobbies that would potentially make her think that I would ever be famous for any kind of reason. But she had this dream of me sitting and signing things. And lo and behold, 4 years ago now, I guess, I was doing that exact thing at Nertacular. I was sitting at a table and people were bringing me things to sign, and I there were pictures of me, and I told my mom about it, and she was like, no fucking way. Like, no way. And I was like, yeah, why? And she's like, so she told me about this dream. She said she had another one where she basically, like, she came into the basement. My brother was watching that Making a Murderer show on Netflix, and they had a conversation, and she's like, she knew everything he was going to say, even though she had never heard of the show before. She had never, like, but it's like deja vu times 1,000, which is something that I've always had, except, like, she remembers the dreams. I don't remember the dreams. I just get super duper intense deja vu. It's crazy. Like, I can almost like take your breath away sometimes, because I'm just like, no, like, this has happened before. I'm in some kind of crazy time loop because I've already lived this. And so I, like, when I was talking to her, I was kind of wondering, I was like, well, maybe I'm just super close-minded or something, or she remembers the dreams where I don't, or like, Jules, you're super open to it and I'm not. So as much as I say, like, I want to believe this stuff, maybe I really don't. So I don't, I'm not as open to it.
I think you do, and that your brain is too busy, like, trying to live in your dream and being chased by T-Rexes and stuff. You're too busy focusing on survival. You're like, I can't pay attention to you, futuristic information.
But, like, so that's kind of one of the things my mom was saying, and she's just like, there's literally no way to tell. She's like, half the time I don't remember the dreams when I wake up, and she's like, even if I do remember it, there's no way to tell, like, what is actually, my brain trying to process stuff from the day and what is vision again. And it's funny because I know the words I want to say, but you don't want to say them because you're right, Jules, it makes you sound a little bit nuts.
It does. And, I mean, I would say for her to just be writing that down. Like, there's your proof. Like, if she has it written down and then it happens on this day, I dreamt that this is this and this and this, and it's dated on that day. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's your proof.
And, like, just how you're talking about, like, how she's very scientific and all that, and, saying certain things make people think you're crazy and whatever. If you lived back in the day and this dude's like, I'm going to make a device where I can talk to you if you're in Florida and I'm in this state over here, you'd be like, whatever, dude, you're fucking nuts. Like, send me a piece of paper with my name on it. You don't know what you're talking about. Now we have the telephone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then same thing with, like, flight. Like, everybody's like, oh, well, you can't fly. We have to take stagecoaches, blah, blah, blah. It's like, now we can do that. I just don't think that we're at that level of figuring it out yet, Right. So that's where I'm
a lot of things. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we don't necessarily know or are unexplained, or we haven't figured out yet. You're completely right there, Nevermore, and I think that's the camp I fall into too. Is just that, like, there is no way that we as people know everything, understand everything, and see everything.
Yep.
No, I know. I'm okay with accepting that there's stuff that we won't understand, and that there's always going to be the quest to try to understand. I think for me, I probably, if my mind wasn't so active, if it wasn't so, constantly, I would probably be stronger at what happens to me. I would, but it would just, it's because my brain is so freaking active. And I think that's what I believe. Because you see, and this industry, the industry for supernatural and psychic and medium and all that stuff is rife with people who are frauds because, hey, they can make money doing it. And that's why it's so, we have to be skeptical. We have to be discerning. Yeah. But we also, I think, have to understand that there are just things you cannot explain that happen, because nobody can give you scientific proof of what happens after you die.
Yeah.
What happens to if you believe that you have a soul, what happens to that after you die? You just cease to exist. But how did you even get born in the first place? We don't know that either. Like, it's just this.
Well, and then, so at least for me, how I guess my scientific way of potentially believing this stuff is just the whole law that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So if I am currently a being of energy, clearly I am making energy and using energy because I'm raising and lowering my hands right now. Like, then, when I die and can no longer raise and lower my hands, where does my energy go? And that's kind of the science way I think about it, or kind of hope that that's how it works. Like,
right.
My energy must exist somewhere, somehow. Right.
Mm-hmm. And so when we had Kelly White, who was on our show for Tauren Think Tank, and she's a psychic medium. Her explanation and what has been explained to her and what she says is that we are souls, spirits having a physical experience. And that whole process is literally an ascension process that souls go through in order to ascend to the highest level of spirituality. And so it's like, okay, all right. So because when we can't explain why there are evil, awful, terrible people out there, and you think about it from a hierarchy perspective, to start from the very basic, visceral, stuff, and then moving up to sainthood, if you want to put it that way, if you want to go from there.
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it when we don't even necessarily have the words for some of the things that we're talking about. And some of the words that we have are words that come from religion, which has all of its own stigma associated with it. It can be difficult to discuss. Yeah,
exactly. So, it was an interesting thing to hear about for me, because I've always just tried to understand, why does that happen? Like, why are there these amazing, wonderful people and these horrible, disgusting, terrible people? And if we're all supposed to be in the same image or whatever you want to believe, why does that happen? So, there's just so, but, all I will say to kind of conclude to this is that, I know that there's going to be skeptics that listen to this, and there's going to be people that say, Jules, you're full of it. But if you're not someone who feels that way, and you feel like, hey, I've got stuff that I want to talk about, I would be happy to talk with you about it. It's hard because, like I said, I've never told these stories on any podcast. I've barely spoken to it outside of my family. Yeah. And, because I don't want people to think I'm a nut job, because I'm not. It's just that there's stuff that happens to me that I can't explain.
That's the whole point of the show, right? That's the whole point of Slaying Demons, is we're supposed to be able to talk about stuff that we don't talk about anywhere else, because you need to talk about everything. Everything and anything that's going on. It all affects you and who you are as a person and how you view yourself and your place in the world. So out with it.
Well, and like you were saying, how people get taken advantage of and stuff, it's because when we lose someone, like you said, how you people kept saying, like, have I seen you before? It's because there's always that hope of loss, that you miss them and you want to see them again. And that's why people take advantage, because they'll be like, oh, I'm seeing somebody whose name starts with a G, and you're just like, and your mind is quickly like grasping it, like who in that, and I think Jules is right, where there are people who truly can sense like what's around you and whatever, and like there's information people can easily look up about you versus memories that only you know, and it's sad that some people get taken advantage of, but their spirit and their hearts are just very broken, where they need that confirmation, whether it's true or false. And that's kind of sad, but they need that, and there's other people who you want answers, and you're going to be able to tell if somebody's just feeding you shit. Like, you're going to be like, this is not why I'm here. I don't have a cousin Jose or whatever, so just be very, very wary of who you're figuring and contacting for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And when you're grieving and you're upset and you're missing someone, you're very impressionable. And there are con artists out there that are experts at how to just say enough to get you hooked in. And so I absolutely understand skepticism about all of it. And I'm a skeptic too. Like I said, the story that was earlier, it's like, hey, that could have been something staged. That could have been something for the experience. And so you have to come at it with a skeptical mind. You have to. It's most definitely. But I also do believe that there are things that happen that we can't explain, and that there are people out there, hopefully I'm one of them, who can like tell someone something that they need to hear. And whether it's coming from me or something else, as long as it helps them, I'm down with that.
Mm-hmm. Which is that's a great way to look at it. And you're coming at it from a very honest and pure place where you're right. There's so many people in the industry that aren't, right? Like, right. And I guess like I should kind of preface this with saying I've never been to a psychic, but many people in my family have been to psychics, and they have, varying levels of things that have come true. But I mean, you just have to, I think you do when it comes to stuff like this, because people are making a living off it. It's not the same as if Jules came to me and said, I have to tell you blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, okay. But where, someone's potentially making a living off it, then that's where you have to go, grain of salt and say, okay, well, is it something vague like, oh, I sense a name with an M in it? And then I go, oh, my dad goes by Moff. So, like, it's just like stupid stuff like that. Like, you really have to be aware, and they are going to be, because it's how they make their living, better at reading you than you are at reading them. So,
and don't like sign up before you go or whatever. Like walk in somewhere where they don't know anything about you. Yeah. Like don't be like, this is my full name and address and my mom's last name and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't do that. That's bad.
Yeah,
exactly. So just, kind of like take anything that you hear from someone who professes to be a psychic with a grain of salt, because it is how they make their living. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that everyone is full of shit. So, just take
an open mind.
Yeah, keep an open mind. Take it under advisement, I guess, would be my psychic advice.
Oh gosh, yeah. And know that there are people that do this as a con. Yeah. And a manipulation. And there are people that I do believe that don't, that do have that gift. And it's, it's in varying levels. I can read a room pretty easily if I walk into it, and that's just my natural sense. If I can pick out in the room, just like, okay, that's a person that's going to be okay to stand by. That person is going to be comfortable. That person is not. And so, I can do that. That's just a natural sense that I have. But there's no proof to that. Like I can, you just have to kind of like trust your gut. And I think that's the thing that I will tell people too, is that your gut tells you more than you think it does. If you feel uneasy about a situation, you've got no logical reason why you should feel uneasy. Listen to what your gut is saying and really look around and see what's going on. It's just, I can't stress that enough.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at Jay in the chat room.
And Jay says, my gut
wants pizza. Listen to your gut.
I want pizza too.
Yeah, go eat pizza. Nevermore, did you want to take? We have one more listener story. Did you want to read it, or do you want me to go through it quick?
I will read it because it's good practice for me.
Okay.
Okay, so it's from Broken Bones, who is a constant person in our chat Discord. And obviously with the name being Broken Bones, like I honestly have zero clue about his like medical history, but obviously his username is Broken Bones. So there's a history there. So anyway, he says, okay, here is my weird supernatural story. When I was in 3rd grade during lunch period, I knew that my left leg was going to break in my femur. I also knew where in the hallway it was going to happen. As we were walking back to class, I left the line on the right side of the hallway and leaned against the wall on my left side, right where I knew where it was going to break. My leg snapped and I grabbed grabbed my lower leg, my right hand, and leaned and lowered to the ground. The pain was not that bad for a femur, as there was no trauma or falling. But when my mother showed up, at first she didn't believe that it was broken because I was not screaming. The x-ray showed a clean, clear, full break. And there was no shift or tearing that can happen with a fall from such a break. I was spared a lot of pain that one time. I cannot explain to this day how I knew exactly when and where it was going to happen and how to limit the amount of pain that I would feel.
That's a really powerful story.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
How do you refute that? Like, how do you, and I don't, like, not even that I want to refute that, but it's just like, man, I wish stuff like this happened to me. Not that I wish that
I'd say it was a spirit guide. I'm just gonna say I think it was a spirit guide that kind of helped you through that one. Guardian angel, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh,
right place, right time.
Nope. It was just that, it was just it was a spirit.
Somebody helping
stepping
you
in to help. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe it. 'Cause that's nuts.
Yeah,
and I know that he's mentioned that I think he has obviously issues with that a lot, but I mean, 3rd grade and figuring that out, like, that's not like now as an adult, he's like, oh, yep, I have issues with this. Like, it's going to happen right now. It's like, he's a kid, like dealing with horrible stuff happening to him, but was able to figure that out. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a little bit of a kind of time passing aspect to this story too, right? It's like he felt that he knew something, and it wasn't like, he was walking down the hall and then said, oh, my leg hurts or something.
Yeah.
It was like he was sitting at lunch and he was like, oh, this thing is going to happen to me. And then, like 20 minutes later, he was walking down the hall and he's like, this is the place it happens. I better prepare. Yep. And, like there's an aspect to time passing there that I think is really important to this story. So, thank you guys. Thank you everyone who sent in stories, all the emails and the messages in the Discord and stuff. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for participating in this and giving Jules the feeling like she's not alone. We do appreciate it.
I still think you guys think I'm crazy, but
I don't think you're crazy. I really, really don't. I'm just I am super, super skeptical, and has nothing to do with you. It's one of those things where I feel, as someone who has wanted this kind of stuff to, happen to me and to be real and to go my whole entire life and never really having any of these sort of experiences, I feel like my skepticism is more of like a frustration with my own life than it is a reflection of how much I do or don't believe you. That's all it is. Like,
no, I agree with that. Because, Jules, when we were talking about that empathy episode, like, where we meet at that is because I can do the whole reading vibe gut thing, but you surpass me on the judging what's going on around you and sensing stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm so close. 'Cause I have that, we talked about it, and I'm just like, I feel things like that, but it's no way in comparison to what you have. And I'm seriously jealous because I love weird shit. Like, my whole life is Wednesday Addams and Monsters, and he will walk in all the time. Ben will walk in and I'm watching documentaries on Netflix about serial killers and the making a murderer and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, there's things like that where I'm just I wish I could feel the history of places like that. I was watching the H.H. Holmes one, the America's First Serial Killer, where he had the murder house. And I'm just it's so sad, but I want to help and figure out what happened to let them not have that ending,
Yeah. So. I mean, when I went to the 9/11 memorial site, I couldn't stay there. I literally could not stay there for long because the energy in that place was so intense that I was shaking. I was shaking. I was vibrating, and I was like, I can't breathe. I can't. And it was like a panic attack, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And because all of those people died there, and I felt every one of them, and I was just like, oh my God, get me out of here, get me out of here, get me out of here. And so it was tough. It was really tough. Yeah. Yeah, it's just weird.
Well, Jules, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes.
Because I know like it was a great experience for us. I think it was a really, really great show. Again, thank you everyone for writing in and sharing your stories. I wish cool stuff like that happened to me.
Yeah.
Where are you, ghosties? I don't really want to know. I don't really want to know.
Yeah, you maybe don't want to know.
Yeah. All right, guys. Again, if you want to send in your feedback, you can send it to demonspodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. We are at Demons Podcast. Nevermore, where can folks find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter. I'm at Quoted Nevermore. And I'm also on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Geek Asylum. And that I'm hoping to stream tomorrow.
Yay.
That is the goal. I'm hoping to stream tomorrow. And I have little goodie bags. I'll tell this to the chat room because they'll know ahead of time. I have like 10-ish little like candy goodie bags that if people come in trick or treat while I'm streaming, I'll mail them to you because I'm super excited about that. So yeah, so I'm there and that's my Etsy. And I forgot to tell you guys, I got glasses yesterday.
What?
I ordered glasses. I forgot to tell you. So I'll send you pictures of those later. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I forgot to do that in my whole, like, this is what's happening speech in the beginning. Anyway. I'm done.
Jules, where can folks find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at JulesRPG, and you can find me also at Tauren Think Tank is my other show that I do. Twitch.tv/Tauren Think Tank, and that records Thursdays at 8 o'clock Central.
And what's happening at BlizzCon?
Oh, BlizzCon. Yeah, you can you'll find me at Con Before the Storm on Thursday. Of course, the CTR party on Friday. That is from 8 p.m. to midnight in the Hilton, second floor. So if you want to come and say hi and and hopefully Nevermore and Jocelyn will be there for a good portion of the night too, because you want to tell us that you listen to this podcast because we want to meet you. We love meeting you.
That was one of my highlights of BlizzCon last year, actually. The number of people that came up and said, because we had just started Slaying Demons.
Yeah.
So yeah, the
it was
number
so
of people
new
that
last
came
year.
Up, and said, hey, I listen to Slaying Demons and you've helped me, and just made my heart explode a little.
And you'll be at Con Before the Storm too. So we'll all be around there also.
Yes.
That night. And then also at Jules's thing at the Hilton the next night. So
right.
Yes. So yep, CTR party Friday night, 8 p.m. to midnight.
Wonderful. You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. And again, if you want to send in your feedback, if you want to talk to Jules, if you want to tell us all of your cool stories, whatever you want to do, that's you can send emails over to demonspodcast@gmail.com. And our Discord is discord.gg/JossPlays. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
bye.